Hey folks, Jason here, Dirt Race Life. We're still working on our crate racing street stock, putting weight jacks in the rear of the car, setting up for a 16-inch spring on the left rear with a 20-inch option. Y'all stick around. So if you're subscribed and following this build along, episode by episode, you'll notice that there's some work here that had not been done yet. And so had my first loss of video there. I used GoPros and, like, for example, everything we're recording here, I'm using a GoPro Hero 9. And I had shot all of this work and it was corrupt and I lost it. It made me sick at my stomach. But I want to recap it here just to show you the progress so far. As you'd seen when we did the fuel cell mount, this is 1 3/4 083 tubing on the front. That's our support for our front cross member here. We put in another 1 3/4 tube behind the rear end. I took and cut the rear end off 2 inches past the back side of the axle tube housing. It's because I wanted to have this big tube across here. Behind the springs, of course, and it's going to give me a great tube to be able to tie ballast onto so I can clamp onto this. This is the furthest back on this car that any ballast will be clamped, is right here over the rear end. Let me show you a few details on this right side jack. All right, so you can see here, this is a 16-inch spring, and I set this car up to be able to run 16s on both sides. Now I'm running a really long jack. This jack is like, it's like 12 inches long total with 8 inches of threads. And the reason that I went with these jacks is because it lets me be able, I can back this jack out and put a 16-inch spring in with no problem at all. But I can set both sides to exactly the same height where everything is even across here. But it lets me be able to run a 16-inch on the left side. And because I've got this really long jack like this backed out, it makes it easy for me to put a 20 in if I want to on the left side. So even though I would never run a 20 on the right side, I'm just basically making them be the same just so that I get all my geometry is the same, all my tubings are the same. It's easy to tell if the car's bent or something because I'm measuring to the same heights here. And then also, it's less springs. So for example, I'm planning on carrying to the track, like I'll carry a 150, a 175, and a 200 in like a 16-inch spring, and I don't have to carry like 16s for the left in sizes and then 13s for the right in sizes. I can just have, I can have less springs and have that covered. It's another reason. You see where I cut that off? It's 2 inches from the back of this frame to where this edge is. That's so that my spring will clear right here. Another couple of things. Of course, you know, if you're following previously, you know that my final pinion angle that I'm deciding on is 4 degrees is what I'm setting this to. And if you'll look, I just locked it so that I'm at 4 degrees because I'm welding these on. So I want to make sure that I've got them where I want them. And I've went ahead and I talked about this. See how I've over drilled that hole right there? I just went ahead and over drilled these until I could hit my 4 degrees. When this is all done, I'll put washers on both sides of these. I'll put washers. I'll make sure that this naturally sits correctly at 4 degrees. If it doesn't, I'll drill them out a little bit more, or I'll take a router and I'll open that up just a little bit if I have to. But ultimately, I'll have washers on both sides and I'll weld that up. And so you can see both sides here. And I'll actually put the washers on and just spot weld them and just work this whole rear end up and down and articulate, make sure everything works good before I ever weld those washers up. Looking over here, you can see 1 3/4, 1 3/4. You see that tube, that's 1.5 inch 095 tubing right there. And that is about 175 degrees, not quite 180 because I wanted to hit my tube in the right place on each side. So I just bent it in the bender until I got the distance correct to go across here. Height-wise, I'll show you when I do this one because I set the height so that when that jack is backed all the way out, that 16-inch spring at ride height is loose. That's going to make it real easy for me to be able to just unhook the shock, jack the car up, and pull even a 16-inch spring out without a problem when I back the jack off. All right, so enough of that. Let's get busy. So on the left side of the car, I'm looking at this from a standpoint of the car extending down away from the spring. And so the position, the angle of it and everything is whatever's best for the spring as it's going out and away, whatever that angle should be. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to avoid a situation to where the spring is going through any type of a bend or a barrel effect where it's getting twisted. You want to try to get it right. Doesn't have to be perfect, never will be. I mean, it's going to have some no matter what. But you have an opportunity during this part to get it as close as you can. What we're going to do here is I'm going to take and I am going to clamp the spring with a pair of vice grips to the actual cup seat itself. And then we're going to turn around and we are going to spot weld it with just 2 spots is all I'm going to do. And we're going to fix this thing. And then I'm going to articulate this rear end on a jack. I'm going to leave it sitting on a jack stand on the right side. And I'm going to drop the rear end on the left side to just see that effect of it dropping away. And we're going to see what it looks like. So let's do that. And it's not an exact science. You kind of have to take a guess, so to speak, like and spot it in and then turn around and see what it does and figure out which way do you need to go. All right, we're spotted in here. Let me check. I made a little adjustment on here, and so yeah, so she's rolled like I got her jacked up right here, and it's rolled up plumb to like 8 degrees and sitting level. Let's see. Let's get back to about level. Let's see. We ended up at about, I think, 6 probably. Yeah. So we ended up at about 6 degrees of incline there with it sitting level is what we ended up at. But that looks the best. So let me show you what it looks like. That's where I say this is kind of trial and error. So I'm just going to drop that. So you see that gap right there. Now remember, the jack's going to hold it in place, but that movement is telling us how much twist the spring is going to encounter. And we're just trying to get the thing where that as it's rotating, see how it's going to slowly move over towards it. See how it's moving over towards it? I am fine with that though. That's fine. That's not extreme. That's going in the right direction. That's going in the right direction. So I think my angle matches this left dropping out correctly, and then front to back here it's a little different between the right side and the left. Let me see let's see what we actually ended up on here. Oh, 86. Yeah, so it's 4 degrees as well. It didn't look like it. Yep, so I'm angled 4 degrees back this way, and then I am 6 degrees this way. All right, so I'm gonna put it back on the jack stand here and get it dead level, and then we can start putting the mount on. I'll show you how that works. We are going to set this stuff out of the way. We're going to use this cup. All right, we've got this AFCO jack bolt right here. Check on my website, Dirt Race Life. I will put the links to these parts right here because this isn't a kit. This I just make up, you know, to the individual parts in order to get what I want. Because I wanted this really long jack bolt with this no thread, big long stud right here, and then I've got the mount right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount our jack flush. We're going to mount our jack flush at 16 inches, all the way at 16 inches. And then this jack bolt right here has got the length that I need in order to be able to, you know, run this to whatever I want. Because like this 16-inch spring right here will actually end up running at like say 10.5 inches. And like our 20-inch, you know, maybe run at 11.5 inches is where they'll actually run. But we're going to mount them all the way down here flush, and then we'll just run it down to what we're after. And that is going to put me in a good position to be able to change these springs out without having to use a spring compressor or have any kind of problems. like with a 16-inch, you know, I'll be able to, you know, I can run this jack bolt out and just pick the car up with the jack, and the spring's going to come out without a problem. Knock the shock loose, jack the car up, run the jack bolt out, and I'm going to be able to get a 20 up in there because I do not want to be fighting with spring compressors at the track. All right, so we got the jack here. We're going to make the U. It's not going to quite be 180, it's going to be about 175 degrees. We're going to make the U to go in right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run a cross tab across here. Ultimately, we probably will have a support that goes on across for this jack bolt. So, you know, if we just had a piece of 1.5-inch tubing, even if it's 095 DLM, which that is, but eventually that's probably slowly going to bend just from pounding over a couple of seasons. It's probably going to move that jack bolt over time. So yeah, we'll probably take a tube, tie on this other side. I'm not real worried about it though, because I've got to run some down tubes. It's going to be some down tubes that come from up here down, and so that's going to go right across there. So what I'll do is probably after I get this down tube in, I'll just tie in right there. That'll make sense. We'll do that in this video as well. And so, let's get our tubing bit. Really like my little JD squared here. Nice piece, but 24-inch piece is all I need right here. And I'm making you know, almost 180 degrees. And like with this type of bender, you've got a limit on how thin your tubing can be when you go that far. You know, when you get out there past, you know, 90 degrees and past, as you start getting thinner on your tubing, you have to have one of those manual benders that has an inside part as well. There's a really popular one, I can't remember the name of it. But if you do know, put it in the comments for me, so if anybody's wanting to do that real thin tubing, they can hold that. But anyway, like this one right here, 095 is not a problem. 083, probably not, but I do some 065 stuff. I keep some 065s, a few pieces in the car that's 065. I've kinked a few of them. You know, if you're going 45 degrees or something, you're fine, but even a 90 degree, I had one that kinked on me, and I was kind of surprised by that, but it kinked. All right. All right, let's check. I'm after 9.5 inches. Let's see where we're at. 9.5 inches. There it is. Perfect. Real simple the way I do this. So I got this U, and I know, of course, I did 24 inches, and it just is a little bit longer on one end, but you need to run it just a little bit long, like for one of these benders, so that it doesn't pop out of the die. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this down on both sides evenly until the center of the top of that tube is at the center of that jack, where I can just weld a piece across between them. And that's it. That's all I want to do. All right, I can tell y'all right now, after I trim to fit, that's gonna be on it. All right, so what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna make sure I'm gonna take a little bit. I'm gonna take a little bit out of the middle. I'm just gonna give them a little bit of a scallop. I'm gonna set her in there. We're gonna have that bad boy ready to weld in. 6.5 inches, 6.5 inches, 6.5 inches. Looks great. Put a little mark where I won't lose my spot. Right there. Set the magnet right here. All right. So, all right. So there's our 90 that way. Let's burn it in. I've welded my cup on. I went ahead and filled it in. Did some 1-inch welds. It's got that angle in it. It's just got 4 spots across it. That's all. I'm going to use my 16-inch spring. This is a Hyperco 16-inch, 150-pound spring here. I'm going to set it right in the center. I'll clamp her down here. So I'm just clamping it so that it's not moving around on this base and I stay in the center. That's the only reason I'm putting that clamp on it. All right, I'm going to put that seat on the top. I've got two different seats here. This one sits a little deeper. It's got the nice pin in the middle here. That works with that long jack like that. I had this. I looked for this. I have no idea where I bought this, y'all. I really like this thing. I could probably make one. Y'all could probably make one like this too, because basically it's just a piece of 1-inch tubing in the middle there with an end on it that's been welded in. But it lets you be able to use one of these long pins like this and keep stuff from coming apart, like if you lift off of a spring. I think that's the reason for that. If there's another reason for it, y'all let me know. It's the only reason I can see to do it, but it's nice, I like them. But you know, yeah, I am gonna use this one too as a switch between springs when I need to. Okay, so, got my U-tube right here. I've got it just sitting at 16 with the jack all the way down. I'm gonna turn my alum mic straight out the back because I think the tube's gonna come out from this side over here. I won't be able to grease that. And what I've got is, this is a little short piece of 1.5" 095 DOM, and I've cut it and notched it to fit onto the weld-on jack fastener on this side. See how it's got those notches to sit on the lip? And then, of course, it's opposite of each other, notch for the tube on this side. And so it's gonna sit right in here like this. And I'm just gonna push it all together and get it right, and then spot it up, check it before I weld it up good. So that looks right, let's weld it up. Okay, check it out. Let's say worst case scenario, at most 900 pounds of weight sitting on my left rear, okay? And so let's imagine 900 pounds left rear. This is a 150 pound 16-inch spring. So 150 pounds divided into 900 would be 6 inches of compression. So that means that this spring would be compressed to 10 inches, which I think, yeah. All right, so I've got this spring compressed to 10 inches. You know, little bit, just a hair of bow in it, very little. It's fine, it's in a good spot. You see this jack, I'm about down on the limit because I think this is maybe the worst case scenario. Obviously, you know, this is a 150 pound spring. A 125 or a 125, a 100, a 80, anything like that, I'm in a 20-inch spring then. And so that's why I've got this real high mount with this long jack bolt right here. Because if I go up from this 150 to like a 175 or a 200, something like that, that jack bolt's going to back up. All right, so looks good. Now the question is, what does it look like when it drops? So right now it's on that jack, which is at ride height. So if we drop it, let's see what that looks like. Okay. Alright, so that's dropped. Let's see how much drop that is. Alright, so that dropped that by, alright, so that was 4 inches of drop. May drop a little bit more, but on the track, you know, that's, I should top the spring out even, or should top the shock out 4 inches of drop. I'll probably set the shock up so that it can do like 6.5 inches of drop at most, you know, with only 3.5 inches of compression on a 9-inch shock out here. But that's 4 inches of drop right there. So this spring is still sitting at, right now, it's sitting there at 300 pounds. It's got 300 pounds of load in it right now, drop down. And direction's good, nothing funny going on, sitting straight in it. Now the question is, what is this 20-inch spring gonna do? If we built this right, we can put this 20 in without having to put a spring compressor or anything on it. So like I imagine, I jack the left side of the car up, and then I just take this jack screw and I just run it out. And all So if I've got this all figured out, this is the first time I did it too, so if it don't work, it's on film, it just is what it is, but it's gonna work, don't worry. Let me speed this up. All right, so if we did everything right, then we can take and just pull that spring out, put that 20 in, and it should drop right in. So let me put the jack back on it. Look at there, y'all. Then turn around. All right, now on the 20-inch spring, let's say it was that same 900, but this is a 100-pound 20-inch spring. So that's gonna take this spring to 11 inches instead of 10 inches because 900 pounds divided by 100 is 9 inches. 9 inches of compression in a 20-inch spring leaves you 11 inches of spring left. So let's see how much it bows when we do that. If we got, and this is where you want, if you're gonna do this setup, in my mind, this is the reason you want to try to get those angles as good as you can, is to try to get this to stay in alignment and not do anything weird. All right, so we're gonna run this down. Let's have a look here. It should be somewhere right in there. Let's see. All right. Oh, well, I'm down. I gotta, so it's 11 inches. Let me pick it up. Duh. See where we're at. All right, so now we're looking for 11 inches there. We want to see how much this spring is. Oh yeah, I'm on 11 inches right there. Now, how much bow and bend and twist? Well, it's got a little bit. It's got a little bit. Not much. I don't think it's got anything that's going to hurt me on my rate, but let's show it. Here, let me grab the camera and show it. I'll show y'all what I'm looking at. All right, so when you look at it, can you see it's got a little bit of bow in it? And if we had it perfect, it could compress straight, but I can't get perfect, y'all. But anyway, you can see it's got just a little bit of bow in it. It's not hurting me though. It looks fine. All right, and then, let's see. And then the question is, what does that look like again when we drop it? Come here, Betsy. All right. And now, with it dropped, so there's that 4 inches of drop. How much has this spring got preloaded? So this spring right here is sitting at 15. So it's got 4 inches on it right now. So it's got 400 pounds still preloaded in the spring. And that's where you get into, you know, the limiter chain and how long are you gonna make your limiter chain and where are you gonna make it top out at as far as the preload that's gonna be its static, its stopping point, so to speak. And, you know, I'm sure that I will have to run one, but I don't know exactly what the numbers are. I may have to just take a best guess at it, and then depending too, I'm going an expert on the shocks. I haven't figured out exactly what shocks I'm going with yet, but I'm going to take expert advice as well too on exactly what they would like to see in this setup as far as any type of limiter chain, whether to run it or not, because that is going to correlate to the shocks I run as well. When we get to it, I'll show all of that as well. We need to get these down tubes in place where that we can tie on this other side of this jack here to create that extra support we need, because I think over time this would flex right here at this tube where it's welded on. If I didn't have something tying it, probably doesn't take much, but it needs something there. So just to make this go a little quicker, I went ahead and mocked up all 4 of the tubes. It's 2 short ones and it's 2 long ones. The short ones are going to run up to the lower part of the cage right here, and the longer one's going to run to the top of the halo up there. So let's get those on right quick. All right, so the last one right here, it was gonna be right against the jack the way that it worked out. Nothing's perfect, y'all. Put a slight bend in it, it's about 15-degree bend right here, and where that's actually at, it's gonna sit in the frame right in that crook right there. But I put that in there because you gotta be thinking, you know, where is everything? You know, make sure I don't have any conflicts. Because what was gonna happen was, is I ran that weight jack down and like all the way up out of there. If I had like a big impact socket or something on there, it was gonna hit against my tube, and that wasn't gonna work. Or if I had a wrench on there trying to do it, or an adjustable wrench up under the car, I was gonna be beating against this. This is gonna drive me crazy. So I put a little bit of bend right here, right where it ties in at. Yeah! Okay. I gotta take a break right quick. Mom's here. Always break for mom. All right, y'all. I got my ends here done for this side right here. It's gonna sit in there, and you see I cut back for the weld. This is where it's gonna fit onto the weld-on jack on this side, little notch for that bottom lip of it. And then you see that I cut a notch through the tube. I'm just gonna joint them together like that, and then I just put a cap on the end here. And it is gonna cover up my grease fit. I don't want it to be at an angle funky trying to get around that. I'm just gonna re-drill that, and I'll move it to the rear like the other one. I should have had more foresight and put it rearward to start with. I don't know what I was thinking. Or maybe I wasn't thinking. Okay. Are you where you're supposed to be? I think you're right where you should be. So let's stick it. That is everything. Woo, that jack ain't going nowhere. So, we got, she is in there. All right, so we got this one on here. So you can see how I tied that around here, and it's tied in, jack, and then, of course, the jack. And it's gonna clear. All right, so here's our left side. Same deal. We've got a short little piece of 1.5 inches here, cap the end off. It's just got a little notch out. I put the cap over it. I'm just gonna sit it right in there and get it square across with this side, and then just tie it on to this over here, this down bar as well. So try to get that just right. We put our jacks back together, put the 16-inch springs back in it, ran them down approximately to what they'd be at ride height. Went ahead and drilled and put that grease fitting where I needed to, point rearward on that one. And we're at a point here where this pretty well finishes up the rear clip of the car. It's got the 4 tubes. It will not have any more tubing. And I wanted to point out here that normally you would see some type of a diagonal tubes or a cross or something going on back here just to keep this from getting twisted. And the reason that it's not on this chassis, now these top tubes, they are leaned in. This one's leaned in significantly. This one does have an angle in it, and that does help, don't get me wrong. but it doesn't need those true diagonal 45s or nothing like that because of this 1/8 inch plate right here. That plate is tied onto that 1 3/4 on that front cross member and tied firmly into the roll cage itself. And so that kind of acts like the center of an I-beam, and it's going to stop any type of shifting. You would completely smear off these corners before you twisted this as a whole because of that plate. And so it's taking the place of, you know, true diagonal tubing running across or anything like that. Let's see what else is left back here. We're going to put some plates on here. I don't know whether to just weld on this this final, you know, 45-inch piece that's going to be 1 3/4 tubing coming out with an X brace coming up. I know I'm going to put 3/16 plates on here, but I don't know whether I'm going to put some nuts where that I can bolt on a receiver plate that welds to it, or just weld directly on. I may just weld them directly on because if this is tore up, I'm having to fabricate anyway, and I probably will just cut them off and weld them back on. It'd probably be a lot simpler than me having all of this mocked up bolt together system. Next steps, the front of the car, steering sector, center link, tie rod ends. We got to work out the bump steer on it. We got to get all that done because we got to get wheels and tires on the front. Then we got to set up the brakes on the rear, get wheels and tires on the rear. Then we're going to break it all down, get the car painted, get it back sitting on the ground, get it all built back up, get it on the scales, get the ballast on it. We will make practice this spring on this car if it kills me. And if you haven't subscribed, it's episode by episode. We're showing every detail of this car. Hit the subscribe and hit that notification bell where you can see the new videos when they drop. Appreciate it. See y'all next time.